Okay, gonna do a grafting video, how I like to graft. This is a persimmon, just a native persimmon that I left because we're grafting persimmons right over there on the other side of the driveway, so I left this little guy here to graft. Whenever you're grafting, what I like to use are pruners, a knife of some sort. I just use a razor knife. You can get a fancy grafting knife if you want. Parafilm, this is the only thing you really have to buy special for grafting that I do not skimp on. A rubber band, just a regular old rubber band, and then a scion of whatever you want to graft. So this is a Makusu hybrid between a Japanese persimmon or an Asian persimmon and an American persimmon. It's supposed to be one of the best around, so we're going to give it a go here. It's cold hardy enough to make it. So it is compatible with an American persimmon rootstock. It's just a random seedling that grew, and we're going to make it into a good tree. So with persimmons, this isn't quite as important with pears and apples. You need to prune off all growth. On apples, I like to leave a nurse branch, and on this one I've already sized up this scion, and we're going to graft it to that piece right there. So we're just going to take that whole piece off. Now that's a little shocking to the tree. It doesn't necessarily enjoy it, but it will survive. On persimmons, I like to come through and rub off any buds that have not popped yet, because whenever you do this, it will try to push growth, and you need all the energy going into the scion that we put on here. So now that we have this, I like to do whip and tongue whenever possible. A person that is much better than me will do this all smoothly in one cut and never whittle and have a perfectly straight cut. Mine tend to bow. I'll show you how I make up for that in my sloppy cutting. I'm not above whittling, even though you're not supposed to. And then for the tongue, you have to be careful on this part. You hook into this and you cut back toward yourself. A lot of people don't like to do whip and tongue or cleft grafts, so you got to do one or the other to start out, really, because it's a little dangerous to cut back toward yourself. But there's a trick to it, I'll tell you in a second. Whenever I have cuts, I don't like to dilly-dally. I don't like to waste any time. I like to have my cuts drying out for as little time as possible. I like to measure, put my thumb there for a guide so I know how long my cut should be. Make the cut on the persimmon. I have these wrapped with parafilm. We'll talk about parafilm more in a second. And roll that parafilm back. Again, this should be one smooth cut if you're watching a professional, but I have really good luck taking my time and whittling a little bit. So now we're just going to come in, do the same thing, hook into it. I like to support the back a little bit, cut back towards yourself. You lock your thumbs together, so if you slip, you can't slip and cut yourself. I know a lot of people say that if you graft, you're going to eventually cut yourself, but you really shouldn't unless you're in a hurry and being sloppy, and that's on you. Alright, so I like to cut these back to 3 or 4 buds. I'm going to give this one 5. We'll wrap that end up in a second. And then, if you can see, we have that little tongue right there that's curled up a little bit. We push these together like so, and you're going to have to come in close to see this. They've locked in, and now, get out of here, Ant. You can see there's a little bit of a gap. We're going to make up for that with this handy dandy rubber band, courtesy of your local post office. That's where this one came from. You should do this earlier, but I'm talking and got all out of whack. So now I tie just a simple overhand knot right there to get it started. Hold the knot in place and start wrapping it. As I wrap, it curls, and that makes it stronger. And I wrap this sucker up just pretty tight. I might stop and adjust it. You want cambium contact if possible, and I very rarely check both sides. If you have similar size scion wood and rootstock wood, I just check one side. I don't ever bother really to go to both sides and try to fiddle with both sides. If I have one side, that's good enough for me, and I have really good luck doing that. If they're the same size, both sides will be lined up. perfectly anyway. If they're not, you only need one side anyway. It's better to have two, but one will do. So at the end, I leave a tail on the back side of the overhand knot. Use the excess. And this is just a plain old rubber band. This isn't a budding rubber. You can buy budding rubbers if you got money. I save money on that part. And I'll show you a tip to make these last long enough to make sure that union is nice and strong. There are some drawbacks to that, but it's worth it in my opinion to not have to buy budding rubbers. Okay, put your scion back in the bag if you have a leftover piece. If you're well organized. The guy that shipped these to me is from the garden pharmacy in Mississippi. He was very well organized and I appreciate that. Sends good scions of some not easy to get stuff. Alright, so this is parafilm. 6-inch section will do a lot. I like to pre-stretch it and make it thin. It binds to itself much easier that way. And I'm usually pretty sloppy, but I go to the base of the rubber band here and we're just going to wrap that around. Sometimes I twist it back over on itself, and since we have this rubber band in place, it is supported very, very well. You can touch this stick and you're not going to move it where you have it grafted. You need to make sure you are tied down tight on your graft union. If you are not, any little old thing, a bird can come on here and land and dislodge that where your cambium contact isn't the way it should be, and if it was starting to callus and heal, it will break that tissue whenever it's very vulnerable. So I like to go up once and then back down and then back up through the middle. And then, since I cut this, I like to put a little piece on the end. The buds on these just pop right out. No muss, no fuss. They're actually very strong and able to pop out of a lot. So if I accidentally put a second or a third or even a fourth layer of this parafilm on top of these buds, it is still going to be able to push through. Okay, so that is done. I might cover that up just to help it heal a little bit faster and keep moisture out. Not going to mess with anything else. Last thing to do is a tree tag. This is Makusu, already wrote this out. I just put these at the base of the tree. You can get fancy with your tags, but I don't usually bother on these until I make absolutely sure that this graft has taken. So if I'm curious what I put here later in the year, or I'm doing a map video where I'm trying to remember where all these trees are at in case I get hit by a train and Elizabeth has to figure out what's on the hillside, I can come through, pick that up, know I have Makusu, put it back face down. That's just a regular Sharpie, face down, the sun can't wear it out, and I don't have to buy a special pin. That costs more money just to write tags for trees. So that's how I like to graft. On persimmons, one last thing, don't have to do this as much with apples and pears, but you have to be diligent with it on persimmons. This rootstock, this trunk, will start to throw sprouts, throw buds. And you need to come through and rub those off every 3 or 4 days when it really gets going. Because if it can start growing leaves down here, it will stop putting energy into the graft. And on persimmons, it will just flat kill the graft. So come back through, rub those off. Persimmons are harder than apples or pears, but I've had really good luck with them. Wait till it's warm and they're starting to grow like this one was, and they seem to do just fine. We're going to hope this doesn't get cooked. It's getting up to 90 next week, but it's been in the 60s last week, so this is the best time we had this year to do it. So that's it. Hope that was helpful, and you can use this method for really anything short of nut trees. Nut trees, there are better ways to do it, and you have to watch your temps a little bit more. But these general rules work really well for persimmons, apples, and pears, which are the most common things around here that we are going to be grafting. And that's it.